Welcome to RDI webinar. I am your host Manga Waife. I've been a trainer and a coach for the past 20 plus years and have over the period of time we have interacted with various family businesses, and there are very interesting things happening in this space. The family businesses in India, they play a pivotal role in the economy. They contribute a lot into the direct and indirect taxes. 1/3 of all indirect taxes and 1/5 of all direct taxes come from the family businesses. And in the 1950s, there were just 250 plus family businesses in India, and today there are more than 4,000 organizations. So there's been a tremendous growth. They have done tremendously well, and they play a vital role in the economy today. So since this is a very important segment in our economy, they play a very pertinent role in today's economy. So today we want to focus on this one. And for this one, I want to introduce Rajiv Gupta, who would be sharing his thoughts and ideas and experiences on this area. Family businesses in the past, 20 years, they have tremendously grown. Of course, they have grown earlier also in the 1950s, but in the recent, after the 1990s especially, there have been accelerated growth in that segment. In fact, 73%, more than 3/4 of all incorporations happen within this space.
All right.
So what do you think have been the reason why they have been, growing so and thriving so well in the economy?
So, Mansab, thank you for having me here. The first and foremost thing is, when you talk about growth of family businesses, we need to look at the macro environment.
Really?
The macro environment has been, you said that from 50s we have taken up, a lot of family businesses have grown, they have become from 250 to 4,000.
Yeah.
We became independent in 1947,
Yeah,
and from then on we have been building up our economy.
that's true.
The demographics have always been on our side. We have a thriving population, much more than we should be having, but a very thriving population. There has been growth in per capita income, which has been happening slowly. So it makes up for an environment where businesses should have been growing. So that is one part of it. Then you say that it has happened more after the 1990s, which is also very correct, because if you look at it, there was liberalization that started to happen from 1990s onwards.
That's true.
In fact, before that, if you see, the businesses were running in license Raj. So actually, the government did not want large conglomerates or large businesses to happen, so that they do not make a monopoly. And so rules were such that they could do only small work. 1990s onwards, the economy was opened up, and there has been a lot of entrepreneurship in the country. And because of that entrepreneurship, a lot of more family businesses have grown. So those are the macro environments of business growth per se.
Right.
Within that, when you talk about family businesses, or when you talk about standalone family businesses, to my mind, our work with a lot of family businesses that we have done, what we have found is that the single largest reason for that to happen is the single-minded devotion and dedication of the entrepreneur who actually brings up these businesses. So there is a lot of clean, clear focus, a lot of risk taking, a lot of putting your money where your mouth is, in terms of growing up these businesses. So that is the reason why family businesses have taken a huge leap
They have
over
a lot
these
of
years.
organicity, they have a lot of focus, they have a lot of
Exactly.
that energy, passion that drives a person. Yeah.
So there is a lot of energy, there is a lot of passion. If you actually talk to these patriarchs of some of these companies, they have put in everything that they had into it. And the kind of discipline with which they work, they come to offices much earlier than anybody else does. They go back from offices much later than anybody else does. They eat, breathe, sleep their businesses.
Right.
So this has been the reason, I think, which has made these family businesses grow, apart from the macroeconomic environment, which was favorable for them to grow.
Right.
And a lot of new age businesses have also come up during this period because, again, because of the overall sort of rise in the economy and the environment that was provided to them.
Right. Of course, I thank you for bringing up very pertinently the point. One element, of course, is that it has not always been hunky-dory for these family firms or any business in any environment. So, what do you believe are some of the challenges that many of these organizations or family businesses would be facing in this situation?
So when you say it is not hunky-dory, I think what you are also hinting at is a lot of these businesses die.
Yeah.
I mean, they start up and they die.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't go to the next level, etc.,
Right.
etc.
Right.
So, as far as the mortality is concerned or the death of some of these businesses is concerned, see, what is a business? Finally, there is an idea,
Yeah.
there is a thought, and that thought somebody puts in resources to convert that thought into business. There are certain assumptions that a person makes, saying that if I do X, Y, and Z, then this is what it will result into. If I put these many resources, then this is what it is going to result into,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
So many times when you start up these businesses, the assumptions that you have taken up, and today it is very, very pertinent. And today you talk about startups. Startups have always been there. I mean, it's just that we call it with a different name today. Startups or anything that starts up new starts with a new idea, a new thought, where resources have to match and the assumptions have to be correct and the assumptions have to result into what you were thinking of earlier in terms of results.
Right.
When that doesn't happen, the chances of these businesses to fold up are there, and so though they happen quite a bit. So many times what happens is that what you have thought of and what resources are required to kind of bring it to the next stage, they are not available.
Right.
Sometimes what happens is that the idea itself has become obsolete by the time you put it up. So there are lots of things which happen. So I mean, all these challenges, whether it is a family business or any other business, these challenges do exist. Even the large corporates which were there, I mean, so-called multinationals which were there. If you look at the top 500 list of multinationals which were there, say 50 years back, and if you compare it with today's top 500, a lot of them would have gone away from there also, because there is a certain time where a certain need, a certain this thing is required around which a business is built. When that goes away, anyway the business goes away. So that's, I think, where the challenge is.
Okay. Of course, that brings to mind, this globally, you are 100% right, I agree with you there. It is said that research shows very clearly that 2/3 of all business don't survive the second generation. In fact, that global standards say the 30-13-3, that means 30% don't go beyond the second, 13% go beyond the third, and beyond that, not even 3% go beyond that. So this is a huge challenge. So for that one, what do you think would be, of course, this is a known problem. so how would you advise, how would you deal with such an, stark fact?
So I think even before we go to how do we deal with it, I think mortality, what I talked about earlier, was more from a global perspective.
Right.
Then when we go to say an individual business, suppose the environment is correct, suppose what you were doing was correct, the market was still there,
Right.
still a lot of businesses start to die. Why does that happen? To my mind, what happens is, in whatever we have interacted with, as I said, the businesses start with one individual. It is that one leader with which it starts. That leader has a lot of energy, that leader has a lot of bandwidth, that leader has some charisma, that leader is basically who's thinking about the big picture and putting something in place.
Right.
And it is his single-minded dedication and focus which is actually resulting into the growth of business.
Right.
As that happens, Finally, we like it, we don't like it. Businesses people do. The fundamental need of doing a business is basically running a livelihood.
Yeah.
Like we run our livelihoods, there is somebody who also wants to run his livelihood, that's why he starts his business. As the business grows, there is incomes etc. which also grow, and the promoters are getting fair amount of returns from the business, and their personal needs get satiated. So they have been able to buy the car that they wanted to buy, they have bought the house that they wanted to buy, they have traveled the world that they wanted to travel. So that single-minded focus and dedication, if the objective does not become higher than that, then initially suppose you start a business, you say I want to earn X amount of money. If the business purpose does not go higher than that, then that also results into the drive of the promoter becoming less. Right? I mean, it is a very interesting thing. You see, initially you buy say a house. You bought a house, you work hard, you bought a house, you bought 2 houses, you bought 3 houses, and then you start to say, whether I want to do it one more time. Every time you do it, there is some risk involved. If you have to grow the business, there is some risk involved.
Exactly.
Now, after it has reached a certain stage, and that certain stage is individual to everybody, what do they think satiates their hunger is what that individual thing is all about.
Right.
But at every stage, whether the person is ready to put in that next bit of risk. For example, when you suppose you bought your first house,
Right.
you took a loan. There was a risk in taking that loan, but that house was required for you to stay.
Yeah.
So you took that risk. But when you do it for the second or third time, now you have some wealth, you have created it, now you are comfortable. Similarly, you have created a business, it has reached a certain point and you are comfortable. Now next time when you have to grow it, suppose you have to put in another capital expenditure into it, you have to go and take a loan. The question many times is to the entrepreneur is whether I need to do it or not. What he doesn't realize, of course, is that unfortunately business cannot remain static. It is either going to grow, or if he tries to conserve it, it is going to go down. So, but many businesses go down because of that.
Right.
Many businesses go down when the next generation comes in. The next generation has its own drive. They have seen their own this thing. They have their own way of working. And many times the versatility which is available in the first generation is not available in the next generation. So there could be many reasons.
Right. In some of our previous conversation, you've been mentioning something about the intent. I think that maybe you can.
So intent is also something. It is the same thing that I was talking about actually
Right.
just now.
Okay.
When I said that a business, whether it is wanting to take that next level of risk or not. You see, it may be saying that I want to grow. We
Right.
go to a lot of businesses and they say we want to grow.
Of course, nobody denies.
Nobody denies that. Everybody wants it. The question is, and which I had put up just now, is whether I actually have the intent to grow or whether I am just saying it from here. Now, somebody may ask me that, what do you mean by this? The meaning is that when there is intent, there is a pain which a person is ready to take for the growth. Pain comes in it can come in different forms. There is risk involved, there is work involved, there is sweat involved, there's a lot of things that are involved.
Exactly.
So for that growth to happen, many times what I find is that the intent or the risk-taking ability, or whichever way you may put it, has actually diminished. So that is again another reason for businesses not doing well.
Right. Of course, one factor that comes to my mind is normally when we talk about one of the main challenges that organization, family business face would be how do capable people or talented people, excellent people who are already in the system, how do you retain them? Because or from outside Because when they see that, oh, yeah, this is a family-run business, so they would see that we will not get that kind of recognition or that kind of, uh, role. Or some of them they see that there is, because that is preserved for the family people only. So how you see that they play most of the time. So how do they?
So
do it?
again, I think these are some of the things, Mr. Mang, which are interconnected.
Right.
We are talking about longevity, we are talking about growth, we are talking about talent retention. Again, if the objective of the business initially was to earn money and remains to be that, and it is only personal wealth creation which is the objective, then what happens is that the promoters, the top guys, they are not able to take in professionals and grow the company and take those professionals and make them into decision makers, and they are not able to de-link themselves
Right.
from the working of the company. So the promoter is playing two roles. One, of course, he's put his investment.
Right.
Next, he has put in his time and energy. Initially, yes, it is all correct. But finally, the whole business, and as I said, that one leader has sometimes got versatility which is like tremendous. So he could be doing 10, 20 things with equal ease. But finally, this whole thing has to get professionalized. There has to be a structure that has to get created. Only when the objective of the organization and the structure and the processes and the strategy of the organization, they are all lined up properly, will the business keep growing. If that business has come into that stage, then retaining talent will not be a problem. Because then retention happens. You see around and you see some of those large family businesses. They are all family businesses. I mean, what do you mean by a family business? Everything is a family business. IKEA worldwide is run by a family. Oriflame worldwide is run by a family. It is still a family business in that sense, right?
Yeah.
Only thing is that it has grown to an extent, or the promoters had the foresight to put in place a structure, a process, a strategy where professionals take over from them
Right.
and they can run the business in a certain manner.
Right.
So wherever the businesses are able to do that, they'll be able to retain talent. So it's a story which goes back and forth. So if you're able to do this, you'll be able to grow as well.
Right.
Or if you are growing, you must have done this. But if you have kept it to a one-man show, then probably it will become difficult to retain. And then it will become difficult to grow as well.
Okay, as over the years you must have, we've done work with various organizations, with family businesses. One question that normally get asked would be, what would be your role be? What is that you bring to the table? What is it that you guys come from outside and then you say do this, don't do this? So what is it that the value add, or what do you bring to that business that brings about that kind of change that is required?
So very interesting question, because this is a question that everybody asks. In fact, even when we go into the organization, many times the employees there also would be asking the same question. What is it that you know about our business? How will you help us? And I always keep saying that actually a consulting person is not doing any rocket science, first of all. It's not that he's bringing some, totally outside of the box knowledge or something. The only thing that a person from outside does, or only few things that the person from outside does, that he is able to look at the whole thing very, very objectively. Because you see, when you are inside a system and you are actually engaged in doing work on a daily basis, it is very difficult for you to be able to look inside yourself and find out what changes are required to be done. Had you known that, you would have changed.
Yeah.
It is almost a similar kind of process where, suppose your family is in trouble or something, and the family, if they just talk about it themselves, everybody feels they are right. And if everybody feels they are right, and if there is an ego attached and they say my word is correct and the other one says my word is correct, then there is no solution that will ever happen.
Right.
When a third party comes in, he is able to see it with objectivity. The same thing happens with us. You know, we go into an organization, usually an organization will have departments, they will have head of the departments, they will be all working. They will have some kind of an objective which will be written on the walls of the organization, which the organization wanted to do. But over the years, when they keep working, many times the purpose that they are working for is not very clearly spelled out. So when we go in there, we take in people together, and for the lack of any other word, we would say that we do a visioning, missioning once again. So we basically try to bring all of them together and say, hey guys, what do you want to do in the future? Starts from there. Many times the practices that they are following. So it's like saying that when you go into your drawing room, Mansab, every day, there are certain sofas lying at whatever place. You don't question as to why they are lying there. They may be looking good, they may not be looking good, but you have got used to it.
Yeah.
But when somebody comes from outside, he's able to say, hey guys, I mean, why don't you keep these sofas in this other fashion? This may also look good. Right? Until unless he says that, you don't try it out. Same thing happens with us. There are people who are doing these practices day in and day out, and they are not able to realize whether those practices need to be questioned again. So we would go into an organization and somebody would say, hey, the receivables of the company are so on and so forth. You know, there are 52 days. And there is a fight happening every day that why there are 52 days and why it cannot be 45 days. Let's put the sales guys, well, let's push them. Question is, nobody is able to question many times, why is it 52 days? What can we do to make it different? Just apart from just pushing for the recoveries. Can we do something on marketing? Can we do something on branding?
Right.
Can we do something else which will increase the value proposition? So that is what we are able to do. Third thing that we are able to do is that you know, when you are, an organization has got multiple people working. You know, for the lack of any other word, I would call them power centers. But you know, there are all different people working. All of them have views, and all of them have correct views. I would not say they have incorrect views. They all want to do good for the organization. But question is, many times to bring it onto a certain platform where everybody agrees to a single theme becomes very difficult. Again, I'll take an example to explain it. For example, there is an elder in the family and he has, say, 4 sons, 2 daughters, or whatever, 5 siblings, whatever. Everybody is saying something. Sometimes for the head of the family, it becomes very difficult because whatever he does becomes favorable for somebody and unfavorable for somebody else.
Exactly.
Same thing sometimes happens in the organization. So, you know, even if you know, even if the best to do, how to put it in practice becomes very difficult, because when you say X, the other person goes this thing. When we go, we are neutral people. So we are not going there with any agenda. Our only reason to be in the organization is to see them grow. And that brings in acceptability in the people. So when we say something, one, we are bringing best practices from across. We have seen other businesses, so we are able to say that with confidence. And the second thing is that we are then, because of this, we become acceptable to people. So we are able to bring them onto a common ground. There are even sometimes family members working in businesses. Again, the problem is multifold there. You know, put them on a platform, tell them objectively what is right, what is not right. And that's about it. And the rest is, of course, that we are very quick learners. We quickly learn the business. We quickly learn the thing that they are doing. Only then we can help.
Right. And finally, a question that I want to draw in. What would be for the listeners, for us who are they are all interested in the growth of the organization. Everybody has the good intention, but in spite of that, you know, obviously things could be better. So what is it that you can give some takeaways or some thoughts that you would like to advise for, you know, dealing with various challenges that you are facing in terms of mortality, in terms of retention, in terms of attracting talent, in terms of you know, growth, new technology. There are so many challenges outside.
So very difficult to say some very holistic answer to this question, because it is like a human being's body, right? I mean, you may have different problems. Your liver couldn't be working properly, your heart could not be working properly, or you could have breathing problems. So there is very difficult to say what to do holistically. Of course, you can say that you keep doing yoga, but that's about it, right? So, but the single largest thing that one says, or one finds it, that if the businesses have to be grown, first and foremost, we'll come back to the same point. Intent has to be very clear. It is not for the sake of saying that you are saying it. You actually want to grow it. You actually should be ready to take the pain which comes for growing it. That is one definite thing that every person has to do. The second thing I think would be that as you are growing and evolving, one has to be very clear that the structure and the process of the organization have to be evolving. It's easy to say. I'm saying this word structure. I think, structure, process, strategy, shared objectives, they all look very easy when we talk like this. But when we actually go into organizations, we find there are huge gaps which are there, because there is some perception with which somebody started the business, how the work should be distributed amongst different departments, what should they be doing, how should they be getting information from each other, how should they be acting as customers and suppliers for each other within the organization, forget about the customers outside. Now, these are things that have to be set up. As you grow larger, you also have to have clean measurement matrices. Now again, looks very simple. Everybody would say that we have KRAs and KPIs and so on and so forth. But when we actually go in, we find that either these are KRAs and KPIs are wish lists, or they are top driven. It is not that people have got involved in making them. So the whole, it's like a machine. An organization is like a machine. It has to, all the different parts have to function in a certain fashion, give a certain amount of output for the other part to work efficiently as well. Right? So that's how it has to happen. So I think the takeaway here is that one of the takeaways is that the family businesses or whosoever is running these businesses should not start thinking that we know all. Many times I find that, they are sitting on judgment on everything. Even many times when they take us in, some of them are all the time judging that as well. Because if you come into that mode of skepticism and not having trust on anything, then it will become very difficult. So they should not be thinking that they know all. They have to be open to ideas. They have to be able to absorb those ideas. They have to keep that entrepreneurial instinct on, which made them come up to that stage, and to be able to take those risks, etc., which are there. And and then, as I said, nobody can copy each other. Each of them is distinct. They have to find out how do they differentiate from the other businesses. What is their core competence? How can they be different from the others? And keep evolving them one after the other. There are two more takeaways that I would like to put in. One, there are different stakeholders in this. So one is, of course, people who are running the businesses. I have been talking about takeaways for the people who are running the businesses. One final takeaway for them is that they have to be very meticulous in doing succession planning. Succession planning does not only mean that you are, your son takes over. That's not succession planning according to me. Idea is to look at the business, to be able to see that if I cease to exist in that as a promoter, what all number of people are required to take my place, what roles will be taken up by what number of people, what would be the structure of the organization, which I've been talking about earlier also. But it becomes even more important because normally what happens is people do not realize that finally everything has to move on and come to the next this thing. So succession planning, the word is very simple, but I think has a lot of connotations that has to be very, very clean and precise.
Right.
Family businesses should not think of handing over the reins of the business to the next generation and bringing them just as owners. We've worked with some organizations, they have done it beautifully. They put in the next generation into the business, they made them work, they saw what their competencies were like they would see for anybody else, and the roles got decided accordingly. And the rest of the things were taken up by professionals. So that is very, very important. The other takeaway is for people who are working for these family businesses. Or for that matter, the distinction would be not only family businesses, any business. What I find is that, whenever I interact with a lot of people who are working, by the way, we also do exec search, and people use this word professionalism very, very loosely. When they have to talk about something, they would say, "Oh, the company was not very professional. That is why I'm not happy." I think, to my mind, people who are working in organizations should be very clear of few things. One is that they have to achieve what they are given to achieve. You are there because there is a role that you are playing. You are there because you have to achieve certain things. And every organization has certain constraints within which you have to achieve those objectives. So if you keep saying that, "Oh, I couldn't do this because ABC was not in place or XYZ was not in place," it will never work. So I think people have to be very clear. It's just like a family. Their business and family, to my mind, are not two different entities. They are all similar entities. Like you are in your family, you make certain things happen within the resources that you have. Similarly, in the business, you have certain resources and you make things happen within that business. Also, I think with the name of professionalism, loyalties are becoming lesser. In the yesteryears, people would work for businesses for long. Today, people would come back and say, "Oh, in 2 years I did this and I did that, and hence I think that is not something which cuts eyes with anybody. In fact, when they grow up, when they become mature, they would not even be considered for higher positions. So people have to work in the business, they have to make them grow, and yes, there can be certain times when they could be moving out or changing or whatever, but there have to be very, very specific reasons. It is not that, and the third thing is that people say we should be dispassionate. To my mind, unless you are passionate, there is nothing that can happen. So if a professional says that, being dispassionate about the business, many times people say you shouldn't be very passionate about, the company that you are working for. I don't think it works. In fact, if you see the biggest leaders which emerge out of businesses are people who have lived in that business like their own business. So that is what I think people should be doing, right from a small guy who joins up to the CEO or whosoever. So I think those are a few takeaways that I would like to add to this.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those pertinent questions and answers. I think we have covered various grounds. And for the listeners, we would welcome questions, and there are the numbers and email IDs coming on the screen, and please feel free to ask questions. We'll be around for another 10 minutes to answer your queries alive. Thank you so much. Looking forward to you attending more sessions in the days to come. Thank you.